"Do whatever you want, cowboy," said the Apache woman tied to the fence. But then everything changed. Samuel had been traveling for days under the scorching sun of the desert. His horse, old but stubbornly loyal, carried him across the cracked, dry earth with slow, steady steps. The wind blew in dusty waves, making his eyes water and drying out his mouth. He had seen many towns in his life, small and big, but the open desert was different. It made a man feel small and alone, as if the world had forgotten him. Samuel, a cowboy by trade, had spent most of his life riding from one place to another, herding cattle, fixing fences, and dealing with people who trusted him only as far as their needs required. Life had taught him to be cautious, to speak little, and to carry his own burden. Yet even with all his experience, he knew that the desert had a way of showing a man what really mattered. As he rode through a narrow canyon, he noticed something unusual in the distance. A small, broken homestead with a fence that had seen better days. The wood was gray and weathered, some pieces missing, and the surrounding land was littered with dry weeds. Smoke had not risen from the chimney for days, maybe weeks. The place looked abandoned, yet Samuel's instincts told him that not everything about this place was quiet. There was movement, shadows, and something else, something human. He slowed his horse as he approached, scanning the area carefully. That's when he saw her. A woman tied to the fence, struggling slightly but not in panic. She was calm in a way that startled him. Her hair was dark and braided, falling over her shoulders, and her clothes were simple but sturdy, as if made for travel and survival. Her skin was sun-kissed and her eyes were sharp, filled with fire and intelligence. She looked directly at him as he stopped, and the first words that came out of her mouth startled him completely. "Do whatever you want, cowboy." Samuel blinked. He had heard bold words before, but nothing like this. The defiance, the confidence, it was not the kind of fear or submission he had expected from someone in her position. He instinctively shifted in the saddle, unsure of what to do next. The desert was quiet around them, the wind whispering, but her words carried weight. She was not begging, she was not pleading. She was daring him, challenging him in a way he had never faced before. He considered leaving her. It would have been easier to ride on, to pretend he hadn't seen her, to let the world take care of itself. After all, he had learned over the years that life was often a choice between survival and trouble. Helping strangers, especially in dangerous territories, often led to more problems than it solved. But something in her eyes stayed with him. There was courage there, a spark that made him hesitate. He realized that he could not just walk away, not because of duty or morality, but because he was curious. Curious about why she spoke like that, curious about who she was, and curious about what might happen next. Samuel dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. He did not want to frighten her, and he did not want to show weakness either. Every movement had to be careful. He approached the fence, noting the ropes that held her hands together. They were rough, strong, and tied by someone who had no intention of letting her go easily. But Samuel had seen knots like this before, and he knew how to undo them without causing harm. "You're free to talk," he said cautiously, though he did not know if she would answer. Her gaze never wavered. "Do it," she said simply. "Untie me or don't, it's your choice." Samuel's mind raced. He had encountered desperate people before, people who begged for help with tears in their eyes, but this woman was different. She carried her dignity even in a situation that demanded fear. He could see her hands, small but strong, gripping the rope slightly, ready to pull herself free if she had the chance. He had to make a decision. He knelt by the fence, examining the knots. His fingers worked carefully, loosening each loop. He could feel the tension in the ropes, the stiffness from days of being tied. Finally, he freed her hands. She rubbed them briefly, flexing her fingers, but did not speak. Samuel stepped back slightly, unsure whether she would run, attack, or simply walk away. Instead, she studied him quietly, then nodded, as if acknowledging that an unspoken agreement had been made. Samuel sensed that their fates were now intertwined, at least for the time being. "Thank you," she said at last, her voice calm, not filled with relief but with certainty. Samuel nodded, not trusting himself to speak immediately. The desert around them seemed even quieter now, as if holding its breath. He glanced around, noticing signs of recent activity, footprints in the sand, marks of a struggle, a few belongings scattered near the homestead. He realized that this woman had been through something significant, something that required courage to survive. "Who did this to you?" he asked finally, his voice steady. She looked away briefly, then back at him. People who don't care about anything except themselves. I won't waste time explaining." Her words were blunt, but Samuel understood. She had learned that explanations could be dangerous. Talking too much gave others power over you. He respected that. Respect was rare in his line of work, and he found himself feeling something unusual: admiration. He offered her a piece of dried meat and a water skin from his saddlebag. She accepted both without hesitation, her eyes scanning the horizon as she did so. Samuel noticed how alert she remained, despite the calmness she projected. She was clearly a survivor, someone who had learned to trust carefully. "Where do you go from here?" he asked, curious but careful. "Somewhere safe," she replied. "And I suggest you decide quickly, cowboy. Life doesn't wait for people to figure things out." Samuel nodded, understanding more in her words than she probably realized. There was wisdom in her defiance, in her quiet strength. He felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose, not tied to money, survival, or fame, but tied to doing what felt right in a moment that mattered. For the next few hours, they prepared to move. Samuel helped her gather what she could carry, and she helped him double-check his horse and supplies. They did not speak much. Words were unnecessary. There was a silent understanding growing between them, built on respect and shared awareness of danger. The desert was not forgiving, and both knew that survival depended on both courage and caution. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, Samuel realized that this encounter had already changed him. The desert, vast and lonely, had brought him face to face with a person who refused to be defined by her circumstances. Nayeli, the Apache woman, had challenged not only him, but the way he had lived his life: careful, isolated, detached. She had reminded him that sometimes life required action, not avoidance, and that courage could be found even in the most unexpected places. They settled for the night in a small, sheltered area behind a cluster of rocks. The wind had calmed and the temperature was dropping, but the fire they made provided warmth and light. Samuel kept watch, while Nayeli tended to minor wounds and cleaned herself as best as she could. They did not talk about the past. There was no need. Both understood that the desert demanded focus on the present, not on regrets or stories that could lead to despair. Before sleep took him, Samuel looked at her one last time. She was calm, serene even, yet there was a fire in her eyes that told him she would survive whatever came next. He felt a mixture of admiration and humility. This was no ordinary encounter. He realized that in freeing her, he had freed a part of himself too, the part that had been hardened, lost in years of solitude and routine. The night passed with the quiet sounds of the desert, distant howls, the rustle of wind through rocks, the soft breathing of their horses. Samuel thought about the day's events, about the unexpected challenge and the stranger who had dared him to act. He understood that life, much like the desert, was unpredictable, and that sometimes the right choice was not the easiest, but the one that required courage and moral clarity. By dawn, Samuel was awake, ready to continue the journey. Nayeli was already on her feet, scanning the horizon, prepared for the day ahead. Samuel mounted his horse and looked at her. She returned his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. They were no longer strangers, but companions in a moment that would shape them both. As they rode off together toward the uncertain path ahead, Samuel knew one thing clearly. Life had changed in ways he could not yet measure. The woman who had been tied to a fence, bold enough to challenge him, had become the spark that lit something inside him, a realization that even the hardest hearts could be awakened, and that sometimes survival was only the beginning of transformation. The morning sun rose over the desert, casting a warm golden light that made the sand sparkle like tiny pieces of glass. Samuel adjusted his hat, shaded his eyes, and looked around. Nayeli was already on her horse, alert and ready. She had a quiet confidence that made Samuel feel both reassured and slightly uneasy. He had been through many encounters in his life, but none had left him feeling this level of respect and caution. He knew she was more than just a survivor. She was someone who understood the world in a way he had long forgotten. They moved slowly, careful to avoid obvious trails. Samuel noticed how she watched every movement, the small dust clouds rising in the distance, the shape of the rocks against the horizon, even the way the wind shifted. She seemed to read the land with ease, spotting signs of danger that Samuel might have missed if he were alone. For the first time in a long while, he realized how much he had underestimated the power of awareness and knowledge. "Are you always this quiet?" Samuel asked, breaking the silence. Naomi turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting his. "Quiet is safer," she said. "Talking too much can make people careless, and carelessness gets people hurt." Samuel nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He thought about his life, how often he had ignored caution, rushing into situations for money, pride, or habit. He had survived, yes, but he had also lost pieces of himself along the way. The desert had taught him many lessons, but none quite like this. Hours passed as they moved carefully across the barren landscape. The sun climbed high and the heat pressed down on them. They drank water in small sips, sharing the last rations Samuel had, making sure neither went thirsty. Despite the harsh conditions, there was a rhythm to their movement, a silent agreement that they would protect and rely on each other, even without speaking much. As they crested a small hill, Samuel spotted movement in the distance, figures on horseback, riding swiftly and with purpose. His heart tightened. He recognized the signs of raiders, the type of people who preyed on isolated travelers and settlements. He could see the determination in their movement. They were searching for someone, and Samuel feared it could be Naomi. "Hide," he whispered. He pointed to a rocky outcrop nearby. They quickly dismounted and led their horses into the shadow of the rocks. Naomi crouched low, her eyes scanning the approaching riders. Samuel could see the tension in her face, but she remained calm. Calm, yes, but ready. "They'll pass us if we stay still," she said softly. "Wait for my signal." Samuel swallowed hard. He had faced danger before, but something about her confidence gave him a strange mix of hope and anxiety. He trusted her instincts, yet he knew that one wrong move could be disastrous. The raiders approached slowly, scanning the landscape as they went. Samuel and Naomi held their breath, blending into the shadows, silent as the desert itself. Minutes felt like hours. The riders passed close enough that Samuel could hear their horses' hooves striking the sand, the creak of leather, and the murmur of their voices. Naomi's hands tightened around a small knife she had tucked into her belt, ready to act if necessary. Samuel marveled at her composure. He would have been panicked, but she remained calm, focused, and in control. Finally, the raiders passed, moving further down the canyon. Naomi exhaled softly and motioned for Samuel to follow her. "We're not safe yet," she said, "but we're alive." They mounted their horses again and moved cautiously, staying out of obvious paths. Samuel could not help but feel a growing admiration for Naomi, not just for her courage, but for her intelligence and ability to read situations. She was teaching him, without words, how to be aware, how to survive, and how to act with intention rather than reaction. As the day wore on, they found a small, dry creek bed that offered some shade and a brief respite. Samuel helped Naomi dismount, and they both took a moment to rest their horses. She examined the land, then looked at him with a serious expression. "You need to know," she said, "the people who tied me up, they won't stop. They won't forget. If we don't move carefully, we'll meet them again, and it won't be as easy as today." Samuel nodded. He felt a mix of fear and determination. Fear because he understood the danger now, determination because he felt a responsibility, not just to himself, but to her. He had chosen to free her, and that choice had set them both on a path filled with uncertainty and risk. He realized that protecting someone else required more than strength. It required strategy, patience, and courage. They traveled for the rest of the day, staying mostly in the shadows of hills and rocks, avoiding open ground where they could be seen. Naomi guided them, pointing out hidden paths, natural shelters, and signs that someone had recently passed through. Samuel followed her lead, learning quickly. He began to notice things he had overlooked before, the way certain plants could indicate water nearby, the shape of footprints in the sand, even the behavior of animals signaling danger. By late afternoon, they found a small cave tucked into the side of a hill. It was not ideal, but it offered protection from the sun and a place to rest for the night. Samuel and Naomi led their horses inside, careful to keep the fire small and hidden. They shared a simple meal of dried meat and water, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. "You're a good teacher," Samuel said finally, breaking the quiet. Naomi looked at him, a small smile touching her lips. "I didn't come here to teach. I came here to survive, but surviving teaches lessons whether you want them or not." Samuel laughed softly. She was right, of course. Every day of life brought lessons, but some were more painful and some were more valuable. He realized that meeting her had opened his eyes to a world he had ignored for too long, A world where courage, intelligence, and empathy mattered as much as skill with a rope or a gun. That night, as they lay under the stars, Samuel thought about his past. He had been alone for so long, drifting from town to town, job to job, surviving but never really living. Naeli's presence was a mirror, reflecting back the choices he had made and the person he wanted to be. He understood now that survival was not enough. It was the decisions we make, the courage we show, and the compassion we extend that define us. Naeli, too, thought about him. She had been cautious, wary of strangers, especially men who appeared out of nowhere in the desert. But Samuel had acted with care, with morality, and with a sense of responsibility that surprised her. She began to see that not all men were driven only by self-interest, and that sometimes people could choose to do the right thing even when it was difficult. The next morning they resumed their journey. The desert was harsh, but both had grown more confident in their abilities. Samuel noticed how Naeli moved, always alert, always ready to respond to threats. He tried to match her awareness, learning quickly how to read the land and predict danger. They worked together seamlessly, like two parts of a single team. As they traveled, they came across signs of the raiders' camp, trampled grass, discarded food, and broken branches. Naeli studied them carefully. "They're close," she said. "We need to be faster and smarter. We can't let them find us." Samuel nodded, feeling a mixture of adrenaline and fear. He realized that the desert was teaching him more than survival. It was teaching him resilience, awareness, and the importance of trust. He had chosen to help her, and now that choice demanded courage every day. By midday, they reached a rocky plateau that offered a broad view of the surrounding desert. From there, they could see a small settlement in the distance, a safe place for Naeli, at least temporarily. Samuel felt a surge of relief, but he knew the journey was not over. They still had to navigate the open ground, avoid detection, and rely on their combined skills to reach safety. "Almost there," Naeli said, scanning the horizon. "But stay alert. The desert can be deceiving and danger is always near," Samuel agreed. He realized that their journey together had changed him. The desert, which once felt empty and indifferent, now felt alive with lessons, challenges, and opportunities for growth. Naeli had become more than a companion. She was a teacher, a mirror, and a reminder that courage and intelligence could overcome even the harshest conditions. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plateau, they prepared to descend toward the settlement. Samuel adjusted his hat, took a deep breath, and looked at Naeli. She met his gaze, her expression calm but determined. They both understood that the days ahead would test them further, but they also knew that together they were stronger than they had ever been alone. The desert had brought them together, challenged them, and begun to change them. And as they moved forward, Samuel felt a growing sense of purpose, a quiet determination to face whatever came next, not just to survive, but to live with courage, awareness, and integrity. The sun rose slowly, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Samuel woke first, careful not to disturb Naeli, who was already awake and moving quietly. Her eyes scanned the horizon, alert to the slightest change in the landscape. Samuel watched her for a moment, realizing how much she had taught him about awareness. Every movement, every glance, every small gesture of hers was purposeful. He felt grateful, though he would never say it aloud. They packed their small camp carefully, making sure the fire was extinguished and the horses were ready. Every step they took required attention. Loose stones, dry brush, and distant hills could hide danger. Samuel had grown accustomed to the quiet tension, but today there was an added weight in the air. He could feel it in his gut, a warning that the raiders were not far behind. As they moved across a narrow canyon, Samuel noticed fresh tracks in the sand. Naeli slowed her horse immediately and dismounted, kneeling to inspect the prints. Samuel followed her lead, watching closely. The tracks were unmistakable raiders moving quickly and in pursuit. Naeli's eyes hardened as she studied them. "They're close," she said softly. "They've tracked us since yesterday. If we're not careful, they'll catch us in open ground." Samuel's heart raced. He had faced danger before, but this felt different. This was personal. He realized that the people chasing her were not just seeking control. They were driven by a desire to punish, to assert power over someone who had defied them. And now, because of his choice to help her, Samuel was also in danger. They moved quickly but cautiously, using the natural terrain for cover. Naeli led them through narrow passages, rocky outcrops, and hidden valleys. Samuel followed, learning to trust her instincts completely. He realized that his own experience with survival was limited compared to hers. She seemed to know the desert intimately, reading it as one reads a book. By midday, they reached a small oasis. A few palm trees offered shade, and a shallow stream provided water. They dismounted and allowed the horses to drink. Samuel noticed Naeli watching the horizon constantly, never letting her guard down. "Do you ever rest?" he asked, curiosity in his voice. She looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "Rest is for those who are safe." "We're not safe yet," Samuel nodded. He understood. Resting now could mean danger later. He took a sip of water, feeling it refresh his dry throat, and considered the journey ahead. They had made progress, but the raiders were still out there, and the desert offered no guarantees. As they prepared to continue, Samuel noticed something in the distance, a plume of dust rising. He squinted, trying to identify it. Naeli followed his gaze and tensed immediately. "They've found our trail again," she whispered. "We need to move faster." They mounted their horses and rode cautiously but swiftly, choosing paths that offered cover and hiding spots. The wind shifted, carrying distant voices, the sound of hooves faint but unmistakable. Samuel's heart pounded. He had faced danger before, but this chase was different. It was relentless, and the stakes were higher than ever. Hours passed, and the sun climbed to its highest point. They moved through rocky terrain, crossing ridges and valleys, always aware of their surroundings. Samuel began to notice changes in himself. His reflexes sharper, his senses keener, his mind focused. Naeli's presence pushed him to be better, to act with awareness and courage. He realized that this journey was transforming him in ways he had never expected. As the afternoon approached, they encountered a dry wash, a wide, sandy path with few places to hide. Naeli studied it carefully, her mind working quickly. "We'll have to cross it," she said. "It's risky, but it's the only way to stay ahead. Stay close to me and follow my lead." Samuel nodded. He trusted her completely. They moved together, the horses' hooves kicking up sand as they crossed the open ground. Samuel's heart raced with each step, aware that they were vulnerable. Naeli's calmness, however, gave him courage. She moved steadily, guiding her horse with precision and control. Halfway across, Samuel noticed a figure in the distance, a rider approaching quickly. Naeli reacted immediately, pulling her horse to the side and signaling Samuel to do the same. They ducked behind a small rock formation, holding their breath as the rider passed. It was a close call, but they were safe for now. Once the danger had passed, Samuel exhaled deeply. "We can't keep running forever," he said. "Eventually they'll catch up," Naeli nodded. "I know, that's why we have to be smart. We can't outrun them forever, but we can outthink them." Samuel realized she was right. Survival wasn't just about speed or strength. It was about strategy, awareness, and careful planning. He felt a growing respect for her, not just as a survivor, but as a thinker, a planner, someone who could turn a desperate situation into an opportunity to survive. As evening approached, they found a small canyon that offered shelter. They made a temporary camp, keeping the fire small and hidden. Samuel and Naeli shared a simple meal, eating in silence while listening to the sounds of the desert. The quiet was comforting but also tense, a reminder that danger could return at any moment. That night Samuel could not sleep. He watched the stars, thinking about the day's events. He realized how much he had learned from Naeli about awareness, courage, and trust. He also thought about the choices he had made in his life. He had often chosen convenience over morality, safety over risk, isolation over connection. But now, with Naeli beside him, he saw that life could be different. Courage and empathy mattered. Decisions mattered. The desert was teaching him lessons he had ignored for too long. Naeli, lying nearby, was also awake. She watched Samuel quietly, noting the changes in him. He was no longer the distant, detached cowboy she had first met. He was alert, thoughtful, and cautious. He had begun to understand the value of trust, the importance of awareness, and the power of action guided by morality. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that their journey was teaching both of them important lessons. The next morning, they set out again. The desert was unforgiving, but both had grown stronger, more capable, and more aware. Samuel noticed how quickly he could read the terrain, how his reflexes had sharpened, and how he was beginning to think ahead rather than reacting. Naeli guided them, pointing out hidden dangers, finding paths that offered cover and teaching him small tricks to stay safe. By midday, they encountered a ridge that overlooked a wide valley. In the distance, they could see smoke rising, likely from another settlement or camp. Naeli studied it carefully. "We can try to reach that place," she said. "It might be safe and it might provide help." Samuel nodded. They began to descend carefully, aware that the valley could also hide danger. As they moved, Samuel felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The journey had been long and exhausting, but reaching this place could provide the rest and safety they desperately needed. Halfway down, they heard voices behind them. Samuel froze, his heart racing. Naeli motioned for him to hide behind a boulder. They crouched low, listening. The voices grew louder, and Samuel could hear the unmistakable sound of raiders approaching. Naeli whispered instructions, guiding him to a better hiding spot. They waited, tense and silent, as the raiders passed by, unaware of their presence. Once the danger had passed, Samuel exhaled with relief. "This is getting harder every day," he said. Naeli looked at him calmly. "It will get harder, yes, but every challenge teaches us something. Every danger we survive makes us stronger." Samuel realized she was right. Each moment of danger, each close call, was teaching him not just survival, but patience, strategy, and trust. He had begun to see the world differently, to value courage and awareness over recklessness and indifference. As evening approached, they finally reached the settlement. It was small but welcoming, with a few houses and people tending to their daily work. Samuel and Naeli approached cautiously, aware that the desert had taught them to be careful even in seemingly safe places. A kind woman noticed them and offered water. Samuel and Naeli accepted gratefully. They found a quiet spot to rest, and Samuel finally allowed himself to relax slightly. The journey had been exhausting, both physically and mentally, but they had survived. More importantly, they had grown, learning lessons that would stay with them long after the desert was behind them. Samuel looked at Naeli, realizing how much she had changed him. She had challenged him, guided him, and shown him a new way of seeing the world. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect, knowing that their journey together had been more than survival. It had been transformation. Naeli, too, reflected on their journey. She had been cautious, wary, and careful, but Samuel had proven himself trustworthy. He had chosen to act morally, to protect, and to learn. In doing so, he had become more than just a cowboy. He had become a man capable of courage, empathy, and understanding. As night fell over the settlement, both Samuel and Naeli knew that the desert had changed them. The dangers they had faced, the challenges they had overcome, and the trust they had built were more valuable than any treasure. They had learned that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about courage, awareness, and the choices they made in moments that mattered most. The early morning air was cool, and the settlement stirred slowly as the first light of dawn touched the rooftops. Samuel and Naeli had spent the night in a quiet corner, their horses tethered nearby. For the first time in days, they felt a sense of safety, though Samuel knew that true danger never fully disappeared. The desert had taught him that. But for now, there was peace, a chance to rest, and a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. Naeli stretched, her eyes scanning the horizon automatically, even though she was in a place that offered some protection. Samuel watched her, noticing how even in safety she remained alert, thoughtful, and aware. He realized how much she had taught him over the past days, not just about survival, but about life, courage, and trust. He felt gratitude, respect, and something more, a sense that meeting her had changed him forever. They spent the morning helping the small community with simple tasks, gathering firewood, bringing water, and tending to the horses. Samuel felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had wandered the desert alone for so long, surviving but not really living. Now, with Naeli beside him, he understood what it meant to contribute, to care, and to act with intention rather than merely instinct. As the sun climbed higher, a few villagers approached them with curiosity and caution. Samuel noticed the difference in how Naeli interacted with them. She spoke politely but confidently, sharing only what was necessary. Samuel admired the way she carried herself, someone who had faced danger, hardship, and fear, yet remained composed and dignified. One elderly man approached Samuel, nodding politely. "You helped her, didn't you?" he asked. Samuel nodded, unsure of what to say. "I tried," he replied. The man studied him for a moment, then smiled. "It takes courage to act when the world tells you not to. You did well, son." Samuel felt a warmth in his chest. Praise had never meant much to him, but this acknowledgement felt different. It was about morality, courage, and doing the right thing. He looked at Nayeli, who gave a small, approving nod. After the morning chores, they found a quiet spot near the edge of the settlement. Nayeli looked at Samuel seriously. "You could have left me," she said. "You could have ignored me, ridden away, and pretended nothing happened, but you didn't, and that choice, it matters." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. He had freed her without fully understanding the consequences, but now he realized that choice had defined the past days, their journey, and his own transformation. "I didn't know," he said softly, "that it would change me." Nayeli smiled faintly. Change isn't always visible immediately. Sometimes it happens slowly, like water shaping stone. But I can see it in you. You're different than the man who found me tied to that fence. Samuel nodded, absorbing her words. He remembered the first day, the defiance in her eyes, the fire in her voice, the way she had challenged him with her words. "Do whatever you want, cowboy." At the time, he had felt confusion, uncertainty, and even fear. But now he understood that her words had been more than defiance. They had been a mirror, reflecting the choices he had avoided for too long, the courage he had yet to fully embrace, and the man he could become if he acted with awareness and empathy. Later in the day, Nayeli received news that some of her surviving family members were nearby. Her face lit up with a mixture of relief, joy, and something Samuel had not seen before, hope. She told him quietly, "I can reunite with my family now. It's time I go to them." Samuel felt a pang in his chest. The thought of parting from her after everything they had endured together was difficult. She had become more than a companion. She had become a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of courage and resilience. But he understood. This was her life, her choice, and her journey. He had been a part of it, but she had to move forward. They traveled together to a small, hidden grove where Nayeli's family awaited. When she saw them, tears filled her eyes. She ran forward, embracing her relatives tightly. Samuel watched from a distance, feeling a mix of happiness and quiet sadness. He realized that her reunion was not just her victory. It was a reminder of the power of action, courage, and persistence. Without his choice to help her, this moment may never have come. After ensuring that Nayeli was safely with her family, Samuel turned to leave. He knew his journey would continue alone, but he felt a deep sense of gratitude for what he had experienced. The desert had tested him, the dangers had challenged him, and Nayeli had taught him lessons that would stay with him forever. Before he left, Nayeli approached him. "Remember," she said softly, "life will always test you. People, circumstances, choices, they will challenge you. But courage, awareness, and integrity, those are what matter most. And don't forget, the choices you make can change more than your own life." Samuel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He understood now that life was not just about survival or solitude. It was about the courage to act rightly, the wisdom to see clearly, and the willingness to trust others when necessary. Nayeli had shown him that one act of compassion could ripple outward, affecting lives far beyond his own. As he rode away from the grove, the wind brushing across his face, Samuel reflected on his journey. The desert had been harsh, unforgiving, and sometimes terrifying. But it had also been a teacher. Through danger, uncertainty, and challenge, he had discovered resilience, awareness, and courage within himself. He had learned to trust others, to act with integrity, and to see beyond his own immediate survival. Hours passed as he rode through familiar landscapes, each mile bringing new reflections. Samuel thought about the choices he had made in his past, the times he had acted out of fear or convenience, the times he had avoided responsibility, and the opportunities he had missed to do what was right. He realized that life was full of moments like the one with Nayeli, moments that demanded courage, attention, and moral clarity. And he felt ready to face those moments differently, with a new understanding of what it meant to live fully. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in soft pink and purple hues, Samuel felt a quiet peace. He had survived, yes, but more importantly, he had grown. He had learned lessons that could not be taught by books or townsmen, lessons that were written in the dust, the wind, and the faces of those he encountered. Nayeli had been the catalyst for that change, and for that he would always be grateful. Samuel knew that the desert would continue to challenge him, just as life would. But he also knew that he would face those challenges with a new sense of awareness, courage, and empathy. The choices he made from now on would matter, not just for him, but for others whose lives he might touch. And that realization gave him a sense of purpose he had never felt before. As night fell and stars appeared in the vast desert sky, Samuel rode on. He carried with him the memory of Naeli, the lessons of the desert, and the understanding that courage, integrity, and awareness could transform lives. He felt a quiet determination to live differently, to act rightly, and to face each challenge with thoughtfulness and moral strength. The desert had tested him, shaped him, and changed him. And now, Samuel understood that the journey of life was not just about surviving. It was about growing, learning, and choosing to act with courage and empathy, even when the world seemed harsh and unforgiving. As he rode into the night, the wind whispering across the sand, Samuel smiled faintly. The lessons of the past days would remain with him forever. And he knew that he would carry them, living not as a man who merely survived, but as a man who had been transformed by courage, trust, and the power of choice.